Okay, this is part two, continuing on the ufology topic. Talked about the reptilians, the greys, and the Pleiadians. First thing you need to understand is that human beings did not originate on planet Earth. Human beings actually originated in the constellation of Lyra. Lyra is actually where human beings, the typical human being form, came from. And there's another race. There's actually multiple species of reptilian hominid extraterrestrials, and they don't like humans at all. Apparently, most humans don't like them either. However, these reptilians, which came from the constellation of Draco, they didn't actually come from the constellation of Draco, but that's a complicated story. Anyway, these reptilians are the main perpetrators of this manipulation of humanity that we're experiencing on the planet right now. If you talk to people in secret societies, the Luciferian satanic secret societies, they themselves even say they have their masters, which they worship. Well, those masters are reptilians. The reptilians are an interdimensional species, and they are very nasty. They're very mean. They're very fearful creatures, and they like to control and dominate and manipulate. They work in a hierarchical structure. They are kings and queens, if you will, that give orders to lesser reptilian species. And the whole hierarchical concept that we as human beings utilize in our business management, in our governmental structure, in all fucking aspects of our lives, that hierarchical structure came from the reptilians. We learned it from the reptilians. The reptilians are controlling the greys. Because of the weakened state that the greys are in after deteriorating their DNA after so many thousands of years, the reptilians are basically ordering them to do their bidding. And the greys are rebelling when they can and how they can, but the point is, these abductions that big huge string of abductions that occurred from like 1950 whatever to 1980 whatever, that was all perpetrated by the greys. The greys are doing that because they are trying to create a hybrid bloodline, or a hybrid species, excuse me. They're trying to take their gray DNA, which is deteriorating, combine it with our human DNA, and create a hybrid human gray species. For anyone that's familiar with Bashar, who is a channeled entity, Bashar's species is the result of the experimentation that's going on right now with the abductions. Now, the greys are no longer on the planet. I heard that the greys get sick now because of something there was a grid, so to speak, that was placed around the planet to prevent greys from coming in and out. Now, remember when I talked about this quarantine that was placed around the planet? There are ways around the quarantine, which is partly how the greys got in initially. Also, the reptilian entities are interdimensional, which helps them get through this quarantine. But also, I've heard that there is a reptilian species that actually evolved on this planet, and this reptilian hominid species was around during the dinosaur times, and just like we herd and eat and use mammals, cattle, sheep, whatever, for our lifestyle, they used reptilians. They used reptiles. They herded reptiles. They ate reptiles. They made clothing out of reptiles. Same thing we mammals do today, just reptilian. That was the dinosaur era. Also, their technology was not as external as ours is. It was much more utilizing earth energies, geomancy, if you will. Now, the earth is hollow. It's honeycombed with tunnels. And there is something called an inner sun. I don't know exactly how the mechanics of it works, but this is what's responsible for the aurora borealis. The aurora borealis is literally the output of this inner sun that escapes to the North and South Pole. Now, the moon is an artificial satellite. The moon was created in the constellation of Ursa Minor and existed as an artificial satellite in that constellation for a while, and then since was towed into orbit around the Earth. If you look at the moon, there are craters all over the moon, and yet they all reach a universal depth and then stop. Some of these craters are 4 miles in diameter, and yet only go down, so many feet. And it doesn't make any sense to have a 4-mile crater and a 1-mile crater and have them at the exact same depth. It doesn't make any sense. Except it does, because there is a literal metallic encasing, spherical encasing of the moon, and most of what you see on the outside is artificial. Scientists have taken readings of the surface of the moon, and they found outrageous numbers of titanium that you would not ever find in nature. At one point, they had done a study where they took a seismograph, the thing they use to measure earthquakes, and they intentionally crashed a lunar module into the moon and checked the readings on the seismograph, and the moon rang like a bell for over 2 hours. It's because it's hollow. It's hollow inside. It's a space station. Remember in Star Wars? The original Star Wars, there was that iconic scene where Obi-Wan is looking at the Death Star, and he goes, "That's no moon, it's a space station." Well, that was George Lucas trying to tell you something. George Lucas is a huge insider. He's many things, but an idiot is not one of them, as Jordan Maxwell would say. The moon is an artificial space station. Which is why it doesn't rotate like many other satellites. If you look at any other fucking moon, it doesn't orbit the planet like our moon does. Our moon is unique. Our government, the American government, at least, contacted extraterrestrials for the first time around the 1920s, maybe even a little bit before that. They have been debating about whether or not to tell the population about this extraterrestrial situation for a long time. And actually, there's no debate anymore. They do. The majority of the people do want this information out. They just don't know how to do it, because it's been a secret for so long. So, and how do you tell the population, yeah, well, there actually are extraterrestrials that exist, and we've actually done business dealings with them for the past few years, and we've actually been traveling to many different galaxies all over the place, and utilizing technology thousands of light years beyond what you think we have today. And how do you tell the population that? How do you tell them that you've wasted over 100 years using an internal combustion engine for the main source of transportation, which has been out of date from the very beginning. Like, who's gonna be the guy? Who's gonna be the guy to tell them, to tell the population that, you know? Of course, I fucking volunteer, but I'm not part of the government. Now, there are contracts that were signed between our government, the American government, and other species out there. The contracts that were signed were with species that are not necessarily positive ETs. And as a result, they didn't uphold their bargain. They didn't uphold their end of the deal. Which is sort of like what we did to the Native Americans. So, karma. Basically, all you need to understand is that human beings are being prepped as we speak for the moment in which we're going to be reunited with our star brethren and reinstated into the intergalactic community. However, look at the state of the planet. I once heard an analogy where the reason why the extraterrestrials don't come down here right now is it's sort of like going into an insane asylum where all the inmates have guns. Which is, I mean, we're all fucking nuts, okay? In case anyone hasn't noticed, we're all crazy. We still blow each other up on this fucking planet. We still let our species starve on this planet. That kind of shit doesn't happen everywhere else. Other species are gawking at us, like, how could they possibly, you know, anyway, but, anyway. As far as I understand, there are roughly about 21 or so other planets in our galaxy that are experiencing as much disconnection as we are, that are as isolated as we are, that are stuck in negativity as much as our planet is. However, ours is the most. And this situation that we have on the planet with the 22 different extraterrestrial species being blended into one has never happened before. Earth is essentially a consciousness program. They're trying to figure out what happens. What happens when you take all these different genetic makeup, blend them into one being, and then filter in all the different various consciousnesses out there in the universe and put them all on the same planet and make sure that they don't remember who they are and where they came from. It's an experiment, basically. And so far it's not been going very well. Well, I suppose it is. I guess it's been right on track, technically. But the point is, think of Earth as a university, and we're all getting our master's degree, our PhD, if you will, in which, when you die, you remember who you are and where you came from, your past incarnational history, and you remember that you came to Earth to learn something. Each person came to learn something different, and hopefully you learned it throughout your time here. But the point is, it's just a game, really. None of it's real. This shit isn't real. Scientists will tell you it's all empty space. It all comes from the consciousness. The experience is the only thing that you carry with you. The situation doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what situation's going on. None of this physical shit that happened is gonna matter. The only thing that's gonna matter is the experience that you take away from it. And once you realize that it's your choice to have a good experience or a positive or a negative experience, you can have a good experience the rest of your life, regardless of what's happening around you. I'm going to do more videos on this topic. I'm worn out. Sorry for jumping around a bit. This is a huge fucking topic, and it literally can go any which way. So, I will talk more about this later on. Thank you for listening.